No, thanks, love. Hello, Juliet. How are you? Can you hear me, Juliet?
No.
Oh,
Hello.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I don't know what was happening there.
No, I don't. I haven't let anybody now.
No.
Are you able to let people in, or does it?
Now, I think what you need to do, John, is you see where it says participants.
Yes.
If you click on that,
Yeah.
on the right-hand side, it lists who's in the group at the minute.
Yes, that's right.
Now, I think what you can do is, I don't think I can do it. I think you can click on my name.
Yeah.
Somehow and allow me to co-host.
Make co-host.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant.
So if you do that, right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a chat now to the waiting room.
Okay.
And this is what they did at the 2 courses I did.
Yeah.
And it was just to say, good afternoon, we are just waiting for a few more people to join, and then we will start at 2:30.
Lovely.
Rather than admitting people one at a time.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Fine. Yeah.
And then I've just got a little Word document that I'll keep up on my screen.
Okay.
Just an introduction.
Okay.
And then in it, let me just send this message first of all to everybody. Welcome to people to join. We shall start at 2:30 p.m. Right. So, let's make sure I ain't made mistakes. No, there's one. Waiting for a few more people to join. Then we'll start at right. So that's gone to everybody in the waiting room now.
Okay, that's fine. Now, so, about half an hour ago, I'd done all the slides, Julia, honestly, last night, and this morning I was adding a bit more text. And I had something to eat. And I thought, right, I'll just go through the lot now as if I was doing it. And when I got to slide 30, there are 39 slides. There was nothing there for slide 30 onwards.
Oh, right.
So I just don't know what I've done. I suspect late last night, when I'd finished doing the slides, I didn't save them, closed the document and lost them.
Oh, you'd have thought it would have asked you to.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to wing it for the last for the last few slides. It's not too bad because it's mostly reading stuff, and I've managed to restore 3 of the slides, but I just didn't have time to do the others. And they, you know, they weren't on the desktop where it would have been an easy thing to do. So I won't mention that until we get to slide 30. And I'll try and keep calm and collected. I just couldn't believe it, you know.
No. I mean, I didn't mean to sound insulting, but I didn't know how to share a screen. So I just literally created a PowerPoint with just 4 slides, and I just put on it pictures of things that are in the archive collection.
Right.
And then just practiced sharing that. And that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So, that
so
was right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, your notes for your PowerPoint, because like I say, what I've done is I've just got this small word thing and I've just squeezed it on the end, and then so it takes up about 1/3 of my screen, and then the other 2/3 of the screen are the actual a Zoom.
Right. Well,
so,
I've printed out my script, but actually
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to use it from the print, because what I've done is I've got my laptop in front of me and it's on there with the bigger iMac behind it, you know.
Oh, so you've got a dual screen.
So it's like a dual screen.
Oh.
And hopefully that will work. Ought I to check this PowerPoint now, do you think, before we let people in?
Well, yeah, if you share your screen now,
Right.
I'll be able to see it, won't I?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to have to do.
Now then.
So share screen at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's your desktop that you're sharing.
Yeah.
So stop sharing.
But I don't know now how to get my.
Have you got the PowerPoint open?
No.
No, you need to open the PowerPoint up first, perhaps.
Okay. How do I close this down?
You should. It should say this. It should say at the top. It should say stop sharing.
Stop share. Right.
Yeah, stop sharing. That's it.
Right. So I need. Oh God, what's happened there?
So what applications have you got open at the minute other than Zoom?
None.
None. Open up the PowerPoint.
I'll open up the PowerPoint then. Right, that's open.
Right, now if you go to your share screen again.
Yeah.
It should give you options of things that you can share, and PowerPoint should be one of them.
Yes, it is.
So if you click on that.
Yeah. I've clicked on that. Do I need to put share then as well?
Yes, you need to share that screen. Right, that's it. Now I can see like the normal view. So what you'd need to do when you start doing the presentation is go to your slide, either on the top ribbon or bottom right hand side.
Yeah.
At the bottom on the right hand side.
Yeah.
If you
there's just the screen,
if you hover over the very last icon, it should say slideshow.
Fit slide to current window.
Well, or if you just click on, you see at the top where you've got animations and then you've got slideshow.
Yes.
Yeah, if you click slideshow.
Right.
And play from start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Click that.
Yeah, I've clicked that.
That's it. Now you've got the slide, and then are you just clicking? Are you just doing a mouse click to take it forward? They're not timed or anything, are they? You're just going to manually change the slides. You can do that with your arrow keys on your.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but it's not doing it.
Right. Can you do a mouse click?
Oh, that's it. Oh, wait a minute.
No. It went then.
Yeah, it did.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it. Right. Okay. So I better now come out of all that, hadn't I?
Well, you can,
Or
if you want to, you can leave it on that screen, because that's, if you was doing it at the Heritage Centre, that's how you would,
yeah,
that would be the first slide that would be lit up, wouldn't it?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can leave it and just go from there then, really.
That's right, you can do, yeah.
And I can still talk to people, talk to whoever.
You can talk to people. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. I just couldn't believe it when I got to this last few slides, you know.
Yeah.
And I was so pleased with myself. I sent a text to Viv and said, I'm 2 hours spare. Never known before.
Oh, you cursed it.
Oh God. Anyway, this is a rehearsal. I'm doing it again for the WI in Bulkington as a Zoom presentation on the 3rd of June. So I should have got it right by then. I'll be able to restore those slides as well.
What I am going to ask people at the end of my little introduction, it's only very, very short, is I am going to ask people to mute their microphones.
Yes.
I think there is the option that you can mute everybody.
Yes.
Or the co-host can mute all.
Yes.
But I know at the 2 sessions that I did, they were also asking us to switch our videos off.
Yes.
Which I think this is, and I didn't know whether to sort of say that, you know, if anybody needs to stand up and walk around, can they just turn off their videos so it doesn't distract?
Yeah, that's right.
Or if they feel they would be distracted by that, just to change their view to just like the speaker.
Yeah.
Speaker, you know, like speaker only.
Yeah. I don't know how many will be coming, Julie.
Well,
normally I've kept a tally.
Yeah, there's 12 in there at the minute.
12 at the moment, yeah. I've got 15 that I know about, but a lot of the others can come if they want to, simply because I sent the access codes out with the newsletter.
Yeah.
I don't really much like doing, actually, because I'd rather know who's asked for a place, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought it was worth trying, just see what reaction we get.
Yeah. But I think, if we just...
And I think if we do it again, we need to do a sort of later in the afternoon, because it's about 6:30 in the morning in parts of America.
I know. That's why I think I do. I don't know if I actually said good afternoon or if I just said welcome.
Yes. Yeah. But no, that's lovely. That's good, actually, that we can do that co-host thing on the day.
Yes.
That's useful to know, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it depends when you assign me as sort of like a member.
Yes.
You've got the option of, I think it was basic, professional,
That's
or
right. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, at least you can do it on the day.
Yeah.
So
that's good. That's worth knowing. But it'd be useful, really useful, actually. I think it shares the load, and it makes it look a bit more professional, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think it's the same as these, like having, because I notice it's like having another, like this little Word document that I've got up. So I'm not, you know, I can read off that, but I'm still looking at the.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that'll be good.
So. Yeah.
15.
So we'll perhaps give people till 25 past, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Give them 5 minutes to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the only thing I've got is, I don't know if you can, well, I'll just keep an eye on it when, you know, when that time comes about people joining in late.
Yes.
I don't know if you can sort of mute the sound. You know, like you get the doorbell chime when people get into the waiting room.
Yeah.
So
I don't know whether I can. I should be able to.
I'm not sure. But... And then does it automatically start recording, or is that something you have to press?
I think at the moment it automatically does, but
Right.
I've discovered that there's a limit to the space you're allowed to have in the cloud, you know, and I think we'd reached the limit, but I'm not sure whether we've freed up some more.
Right.
I think we've deleted Beverly's.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to redo the slideshow, which she's done, and I've sent that to Alison, but she can't download it because she thinks it was done on a...
Oh, right.
So that could be a problem, because although I've sent stuff to her and it's been okay, I think it depends how it's sent, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, those courses were really interesting.
They sound really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any others on it, do you know?
I think there was only 9 of us on the first one.
Right.
And I think there was about 16 of us on the one on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
But it's all about, and it's things that I hadn't realised. The thing called accession.
Yes.
Because obviously we haven't got anything in writing.
No.
Transferring the copyrights or anything to this, but one of the sections that he was talking about was on, and I didn't think of this, was basically about weeding out the collection.
Yeah.
You know, and being quite sort of honest and brutal as to what's going to be valuable. But one thing, because we had a little exercise to do, and one of the things was, they listed things, and you had to say whether you felt it was worth being in the collection or not. And one of them was like 15 copies of a pamphlet or something.
Yeah.
And one of his suggestions was, you know, what you could do is you could keep one, you could keep another one for a handling collection.
Yeah.
But then you could perhaps sell the others to raise funds. Yeah. And I immediately thought of all of the programs that are in the archive at the minute for the, you know, the Westminster, the opening of the slab.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, did the Fellowship produce them, or did Westminster Abbey produce them?
I don't know, to be honest. I suspect
because
the Abbey.
You suspect the Abbey?
I think,
right. Oh.
But they wouldn't mind. They wouldn't know, would they?
Well, this is it. I mean, it's if you start, because I was thinking, oh, people might like that, to have a piece of memorabilia.
Absolutely.
And you put a few, you know, you could say this is sort of like a fundraising exercise for the visitor centre.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good idea. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed them and learnt from them. That's really good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's just yesterday's was all the cataloguing and.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is I'm concerned about is like the storage, and then also insurance.
Yes.
And things. But I think I do need to sort of try and catch up with you sometime, whether it be over Zoom or face to face, to sort of like talk about the archive and that.
Yeah. Now that would be good. Well, we've got 20 people waiting now, so
21.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Oh dear.
Going to be a busy week next week because we've got a Fellowship Council meeting on Monday. Monday.
Yeah.
First one since the disaster with, and then we've got a GPT one on Wednesday.
Oh gosh.
So.
So what did you mean by app when you said she deleted?
I don't know. There was some app that was needed to access something or other, and I don't know quite what it was. I only got copied into their exchange of email. You know, it's been sorted now anyway, and it's been able to pay, so that's okay. Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Right. Shall I? Do you want me to let people in?
That would be absolutely fine, Juliet.
Right. Okay. Let's.
It said something about 2:30.
Well, the thing starts at 2:30, but it should open at 2 to let people get in.
Well, maybe it started now. Oh, is that him there? Look.
Yeah. We're just letting you all in now.
Good. Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
My picture's not coming up, John. I don't know why. Hang on.
Have you got
Just a
your
minute.
stop?
Start video would help, wouldn't it?
It would. There you go, Mary.
Hello, Mary.
It's all right. It's just that I've been waiting a while and it's got me confused. That's my excuse.
We thought we'd wait until sort of 25 past and then let everybody in.
Right.
So-
Okay.
And Juliet is now co-hosting, so Juliet is in charge of admittance.
All right. Brilliant.
Hold on a minute. I'm just getting a message from Joy now. Hello, Joy. Yes, it is. It's on now. When John sent the
Hi, Mary.
May newsletter.
Hi.
Hold on.
Hello, Ted.
Hi, John.
Good morning, all.
Good
Morning.
Morning.
Greetings from New England.
Yes,
Hey.
indeed.
Cheers.
And from Los Angeles.
Oh, Los Angeles.
Yes.
Oh.
Hello, Sol.
Hi there, John.
Is that Anne there? It is. Is that Anne Christina?
Yeah, who are you?
Ted.
Where are you speaking from?
What do you mean, where am I speaking from?
There's a
Nuneaton,
little-
where else?
I can't see a box that says Ted.
Oh, well, hard luck. You're missing out on a treat.
I didn't recognise you, Ted, with that long hair.
It's
Oh,
the
right.
hair. You don't look the same at all.
I'm not the same. I'm post-pandemic. We're all changed. We're all altered.
Uh,
28. That's good.
yeah.
Says 22 on mine. Yeah.
Same
Hello,
here.
Drew. Can you hear me?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'm muting.
All right. Yeah. Okay. But nice to see you.
And to see you. as
I'll
well.
try and give you a ring this week.
Oh, yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
And you.
Ken's here as well.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, darling. Nice to see you, Mary.
Oh, and you. Lovely.
I'm gonna go and sit down.
Yeah, good to sit down.
I've changed my name now, Ted, so you recognise me.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I've messed my screen up now. I'm just trying to get everybody on screen, but I'm not doing very well. Oh, there we go. Great.
Oh,
Hello. Hi, Joy.
Hello, thanks, Juliet. Just in time.
The best way to be.
Good morning.
Hello, Elaine.
Hi.
Okay. Oh, Valerie. Oh, hello, hello.
Alexa, Bowser.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got in, Bob.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem was. Just one of those things, I suppose.
Yeah.
I thought you were probably watching your emails.
How can we get everybody on the screen?
Yeah, I can only see about 2 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to press the arrow at the bottom.
What's happening at the minute is we're actually viewing John's screen.
Yes, we are.
The slideshow. So you're going to be limited on
Yeah.
on how many you can
Can't
see.
get Tal name either.
Oh, there you are, Valerie.
Oh, I heard that Viv can't join us today, which is sad. But anyway,
No, it's her birthday today.
that's it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And she's, well, she'll be off the train by now, but she was going into her daughter and family in London.
Right.
First
I think
time-
it's somebody. Yeah, it's somebody else's birthday tomorrow.
Everybody
Definitely, it
Facebook.
definitely will be somebody's birthday tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, somebody not a million miles from
So
here.
should we be singing or something then?
I don't think she would like it. I don't know.
I don't know why I can't. I don't.
Shall we give it till a few more minutes and then perhaps shall we start?
Yeah, I think give it a minute or two,
Yeah.
because we've just got Brenda Mackay on the phone wanting the code. I mean, it's been sent 2 or 3 times, but you know, so
That's Brenda.
yeah. And there've been 1 or 2 others who have asked for the code, which I've just sent in the last minute.
Okay.
Well, I had the code, but I got a strange response. But it's just a technical hitch, I think.
I think so. At least you're with us now, Bob.
Fate willing.
Fate willing, yes.
John, somebody mentioned on David's watching is on the Dugdale conference at the moment, and somebody actually asked the question about Coventry being the capital of England, as they'd heard it on this morning's Today programme.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in the Civil War it was the Cromwell became capital for a short time, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't have any royalties, so it was never the capital of England.
Well,
in that sense,
as the Republic of England.
Yeah.
Woodstock was as well, wasn't it? Wasn't that
Winchester was.
And I think Woodstock as well was the
I don't know.
The royalist capital because London was so dangerous. Right.
I think they're actually using some of George Eliot's words in the opening ceremony for the City of Culture.
Yeah, they
aren't
are. But if you'd heard the Today programme, I don't think you'd have much confidence in it, really.
Oh, okay. I won't get my hopes up then.
She evidently wrote hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, that's right. George Eliot. Yeah. Oh well, can't win them all. I did wonder whether we ought to set up a sort of counter festival, you know,
Yes.
the
Yes,
festival
definitely.
at the height of the City of Culture event.
Oh, Beverly's there. Hi, Beverly.
Oh, I was muted. Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Hello, Beverly.
Ah, there you are. Good.
Good to see you all. It's only 8:30 in the morning here.
Oh,
so
wow.
Not too early. It's probably really bad for anyone joining us from California. Is anyone here from California today?
It's me.
Ah, you're up very
It's only
early.
6:30 here. 6:35.
I'm from California,
Oh,
Stanford.
I'm in
Oh,
I'm
wonderful.
in Massachusetts and it's 9:30.
It's
Oh.
6:30 here.
9:30, 8:30, not too bad, although it is Saturday. 6:30, I don't know. You might not have seen me. Nah, John, I wouldn't miss this one.
I've got nothing but admiration for people who get up early in the morning for something.
yeah.
George
Me
Eliot.
For you, John, it's worth it.
It's
You have
lovely
to
to
go
see you
to
all.
bed earlier, John. If you're going to get up early, you have to go to bed early.
I
It
know,
hasn't started yet.
yeah. Oh, well.
We'll have to remember to mute during John's talk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, I'll just give it an introduction and I will say that at the end. But I think we have got the option to mute you all anyway, which seems a bit harsh.
Oh, I could mute lots.
No, it's a good idea.
As a teacher, Juliet, there were many times when I would have been very glad of the ability to mute everybody in the class.
The only problem with that, John, is that pupils might want to do that to us.
No, yes.
But they, in a way, they sort of would.
Yeah, they
just
do it
zone
anyway.
out and go, yeah, they zone out.
They do it anyway, but rather ostentatiously. Well, do you think we should make a start now, Juliet?
Yes, I think we should. Yeah. So,
Juliet's
right.
the host. Okay.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for taking time out of your Saturday to join us for this talk by John. The title of today's talk is How Nuneaton Celebrated George Eliot Between 1880 and 1920. As many of you may already know, John was a member of the fellowship for several years before he joined the council, and in 2006 he took over from Bill Adams as chairman. Today's talk will include details about some of the early dramatic adaptations of George Eliot's novels that took place in Nuneaton, and John is also going to show how local government and businesses tried to capitalise on her name. Ooh. We anticipate today's talk will last for 60 minutes, after which there will be the opportunity to ask John any questions that you want. And as I said earlier, I would ask that you all mute your microphones now, so it doesn't disturb anybody's enjoyment of the talk. And if you feel you need to perhaps move away from your screen for whatever reason, could I also ask you to mute your video so it doesn't distract? Thank you very much. Over to you, John. Okay,
thanks, Juliet. Yeah, I hope you'll find this interesting. I mean, it's a little bit obscure, I suppose, in a way, but I've actually found it fascinating over the years, just trying to work out what Nuneaton made of this extraordinary woman who grew up in their midst. Actually, I still have the same questions about the present residents of Nuneaton and what they think of it. And we were able to examine a bit of that, I suppose, during the bicentenary celebrations. But those early years after the death, particularly of George Eliot, I think are quite interesting. And I shall be following a number of themes and threads. So it might appear as if I'm going back and forth, but I'm not really. I'm just sort of following a thread. So I'm hoping this is going to work okay. Let me see. Right. Yep. Everybody's got that on their screen, presumably. This is a 1911 cover of a guidebook. And it was called Pictures of Nuneaton and the George Eliot Country. It's strange, isn't it, how the is added. We wouldn't put the George Eliot Country now, but they did. Contemporary things always mention the George Eliot Country. This, of course, is 30 years after George Eliot died. And I'm not quite sure why it took them so long. There were similar pamphlets or booklets to this. This one is 1911. I know of one from 1904 and 1907, and they're all very similar, actually. But they're not appearing really until 20 years after her death. I think it might be connected. Sometimes, you know, they're just mundane reasons for these things happening when they do. I think it might be connected with the availability in the early years of the last century of cheaper printing presses and the growth of local and very often well-written local newspapers. And there was a growing use of photographic techniques so that, you know, reproducing pictures became cheaper and easier and better. And the coming of roll film from Kodak, all these things were sort of the technology really was enabling fairly cheaply produced things like this, because these would have sold for threepence or sixpence in Edwardian times. And another factor as well, which I'll look at later, was the coming of postcards and a very efficient postal system. You could almost compare the coming of postcards with the coming of the mobile phone camera. It had an extraordinary effect, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So this first section really I've called creating public appeal, you know, finding things that were useful and valuable for members of the public to find out more about George Eliot. This is the first of the pages in that book that you've just seen the cover of. There are several pages. I'm going to show them all, not all of them, but some of them to you, just to give you an idea, because this established a sort of format. Basically, it is you say what you can about the books, especially the ones that are locally based, and you show the pictures that go with them. And that's what happens here. So the same sort of thing could happen now, but doesn't. There have been similar productions, but not in the same numbers in recent years. Nowadays, they would have colour pictures and a slightly different style. But there's a bit here which I can read to you. There's a good use of hyperbole, really, and it says, George Eliot has given the town a worldwide reputation, for even as pilgrims journey from all parts to the Shakespeare, the Scott, and the Burns countries, so do they travel from the uttermost parts of the earth to Nuneaton and the George Eliot country. There are few places in England richer in historic and romantic interest than the neighbourhood of Nuneaton, which is slightly overblown and rather ignores the coal mines and the brickworks and the heavy industry that was going on all around the town. But there we are. It is a bit overblown. As somebody who has done a bit of work on design and, you know, knows his way around a bit of Photoshop, I find it really interesting that at the top there, Geo, Eliot and Nuneaton. And you think to yourself, somebody made a decision to abbreviate George to GEO, and I don't know why. It's just one of those odd things that you notice, isn't it, really? I mean, they're not short of space. They could have expanded it, but there we are. That's just my looking at it in that odd sort of way. This is a second page. Again, you can see here the typical pictures. There's the schoolroom, there's the elms, or the surrounding text is giving us all that basic background information. Some of the photographs are very good. Some of them were employing good photographers. This one, I think, is by Claire Spate, and I'll tell you more about him later. But again, it's the standard view of Griff. So in other words, once we're into the last century, the 1900 onwards, there is material available and it's relatively cheap, so that people locally could access it if they wanted to. South Farm as well. All the places that you would expect are there. Childerscote Church. Okay. Lloyd Dempster's house, the George Eliot Memorial, which of course in this picture is in Arbury Park. It's not in the George Eliot Memorial Gardens as it is now. And these are a bit grainier. I think they probably had to fill a page with these, but or copy them from somewhere else. But two pictures of Astley, the old mill at Arbury, and Corley Hall Farm. So if you got threepence or sixpence and you were interested in those years up to the First World War, from 1903, 1904 onwards, there was plenty of material. But this is what, in a way, brought democracy to the printed world, the postcard craze. And it's quite extraordinary, really. The craze started in earnest. This is just a bit of background, but it is important that these things happened because they allowed vast numbers of George Eliot postcards to be sent all over the world. And they all had those similar pictures that you've already seen in the guidebook. Sometimes they were in colour, machine printed, as this is. You can see if you look at the top there, the brick colour doesn't quite fit in with the chimney, but these things happen. This is a postcard, then one of thousands, millions, basically. And before 1902, you could only write the address of the person it was sent to on the front of the postcard. You couldn't write anything else. So in order to write something to the person you were sending the card to, you had to use the reverse of the postcard. And of course, the reverse of the postcard is where the picture is. And so manufacturers had to design that side of the card so that there was space for writing as well. And it meant that they couldn't have a full-size picture. They're petty little things, but they have a huge impact. In 1902, the law was changed and you could have text and address on the same side as the postcard. And what happened then was that the postal rate for sending a postcard was a halfpenny. The postcards themselves cost, the cheap ones, a halfpenny, maybe a penny for a real photograph. So it really was pretty inexpensive. It democratized, in a way, the geography of the country. You know, people could send very cheaply and receive freely and frequently postcards from everywhere. And it made a huge difference to the way people looked at the world. So there were massive companies that grew up. And postcard production literally was measured in the millions. It was massive. What's also interesting is that it was a completely cross-social class activity. People from all social classes collected postcards and were thrilled to do so. Now, this is one by Raphael Tuck. It's nicely produced. They went to a lot of trouble. Raphael Tuck were one of the leading commercial printers in the country. And George Eliot and George Eliot fans in Nuneaton benefited from that company, as you will see. There were other companies that you'll have heard of, Valentine's and Judges, various others. And most of them were produced in huge quantities. And now, even now, you can pick them up for 50 pence a pound, £1.50. The better cards can fetch £100. But that would be an unusual card of a particular place. And it would have been produced by a local photographer, and he might not have produced many of them in his dark room, whereas Valentine's would have a print run of tens of thousands. So it reached its peak between 1907 and 1911, which is just about the time in Nuneaton when those guides were being produced. It went into a bit of a decline, particularly with the First World War, And by 1918, it was going out of fashion. And in 1918, the postage rate went up from a halfpenny to a penny halfpenny, which is a big increase. And in a way, the bottom dropped out of the market. But George Eliot was a key selling point. We'd tab it or hashtag it or whatever now with social media. But any card where the printer could see that there could be a link with George Eliot, the name George Eliot appears on the card. And it helped to sell the cards, which in itself is telling us something, isn't it? That ordinary people are buying cards with that link to George Eliot, even if they're not necessarily reading George Eliot. So that's a lovely card. There were 6 in this set, but this is the only one George Eliot related. Another company locally was F.R. Jones, and he produced hundreds of cards, but they were nearly all produced in the dark room. Some were produced with another man called Bradbury, and they produced quite a lot of George Eliot related ones. You can always tell an F.R. Jones card because whoever wrote the text on the negative or the plate, it always leant backwards. And for us postcard collectors, that's the clue. Oh, F.R. Jones. And then lovely on the right, of course, even though you're producing a postcard and you might think to spell check, not that there was a spell check there, but to have Eliot misspelt in 2 ways is quite clever, really, isn't it? 2 L's and 2 T's, but there we are, South Farm. So these were really massive sellers and certainly would have made the general public aware in the Nuneaton area of this woman, George Eliot, because the postcards were there. Now, we come on now, just again, briefly, I could talk all afternoon about this man, but Claire Spate was one of the quality producers of postcards. So this is Milby Church. These are all originally hand produced by Claire Spate, who was a marvelous photographer. He had a big studio and dark room in the centre of Nuneaton. This is Milby Church, St Nick's Parish Church. And the originals of these are all about 16 up by 12 inches, and they're in Nuneaton Library. I always think it's unfair that they're there. They ought to be in my house, really, because I could make really good use of them. But there we are. The originals are there. And what Claire Spate then did was to hand write what you can see along the bottom there. And he took great care with them. He was meticulous. What I like about this is that what we as a fellowship try to do is whatever we do to get the best people locally and nationally or internationally, of course. But if we're doing something locally, if we can get the best local to pay service to George Eliot, then that's right and proper. And in a way, what Claire Spate is doing here is exactly that. He is honouring George Eliot by putting his best efforts into a postcard. What's really interesting about these postcards, I'll show you some more here. There's one of the elms, the schoolroom. And then these 2, Millie's grave in Chilverscote Churchyard, and the Harrison portrait of George Eliot there. So there were about 30 or so in his series. They were all sepia toned, as this one is. So each one of these cards has been produced in Claire Spate's darkroom. That means it's gone through the developer and the printer, and it's been washed, and then it goes into the sepia toner, which causes awful trouble because it smells awfully of rotten eggs. But there's a human process there. And what I found really interesting is that nearly all the Claire Spate cards that I know of haven't been posted. In other words, people were recognizing their quality and were buying them to collect rather than to post. It's a bit like when you go to the British Museum and you see all the postcards there that they've got, and they're about £1 each, and you think, my God, that's a lot of money for a postcard that cost at the most 5p to produce. But the British Museum is appealing to the same instinct in us that we'll buy this to collect and keep and save. So Claire Spate then, wonderful pictures. He did a series on Shakespeare, lots of pictures of Stratford and Shakespeare related, and he did a series on rugby. He intended to do a series on lots of other literary figures, but he never got round to it. But he was a superb photographer. So that sort of democratizes, if you like, George Eliot. And we're going to move forward just now to really right forward to almost to the end of the period we're dealing with this afternoon, 1919, and the pageants and the outdoor events for the general public. you know, it's a bit like a carnival. You'd go along to these things. You wouldn't be expected to have an intimate knowledge of the Mill on the Floss or Middlemarch. You went along for a bit of fun. And the kids often would take part in pageants and would dress up and so on. So we've got 1919, the centenary, Leicester Chronicle. Again, you can see there all the pictures, obvious. We've seen them already elsewhere. And then the Tribune, this was the weekly Tribune in Nuneaton. They printed their not colour supplements, but photographic supplements on a better quality paper. So you can see there's the lump of coal, huge lump of coal, and then at the bottom, Maggie Tulliver's visit to the gypsies. And these involved lots and lots of people. Here they are again, lots of people, a group of Adam Bede characters in the Arbury Park, you know, that's quite a big selection of people, all dressed up, all sorted. Others on the right-hand page. Unfortunately, for all my searching, I've never yet come across any of the original prints for the centenary. There must have been dozens and dozens taken. They've never come my way. So all I've got are these newspaper copies. And of course, newspaper reproduction was not terribly clever at that time of the early 20th century. And again, similar, I mean, a car entitled Pageant of Books, represented by Heath End Schools. You'd suggest that that wagon is sort of heavily overloaded with kids, wouldn't you, really? I don't know whether you'd be allowed to put that many there now. But I love this one at the bottom. This is the natural stage in Arbury Park. And this is their Adam Bede. They've got Father Time there as well. I don't remember him in Adam Bede, but it doesn't matter. And what they've got, the little children in the foreground, look, you can see them all there, and they're all dressed in yellow and green, and they represent the curtain. So it's an outdoor theatre. So you want a curtain, you dress the children up, and then they move to one side for the play to continue. And then you'll see also there's the programme on the right-hand side. So really, Nuneaton went to town for this centenary. The fellowship went to town for the bicentenary. I wouldn't say that the local authority in Nuneaton did anything much, but you know, maybe they left it all to us. But this is part of the programme, and you can see that a lot happened. And these are all events really that were designed to get the public involved, really making it sort of public access, apart from the third day, which was a bit more specialised. So there are always luncheons, and there's always a bishop. Lord Bishop of Birmingham was taking part, children's festival, and then a costume ball, and they're all invited to come along and dress up. Second day, a lecture, George Eliot, The Woman and Her Work, and then another luncheon for the mayor and distinct. But then the pictures that we've already seen, the George Eliot pastoral play, first performance on a natural stage at Arbury Park. This was at 2:30, and it was repeated at 6 o'clock. Now, I'd love to find a copy of Charles Farmer's George Eliot pastoral play. There must be copies, but I've never found one. There must be copies because they printed it out, and you could buy one for 1 and 6p. So that's still on my shopping list of trying to find one of Farmer's plays. What is really interesting, though, is that there were 2,000 people taking part at Arbury Park. And I used to think, when we were worrying about the bicentenary a couple of years ago, I used to have idle thoughts about, wouldn't it be fun to phone Viscountess Daventry, who is the patron of the George Eliot Fellowship, and say, oh, Georgia, by the way, we'd like to bring 2,000 children up for an afternoon and evening in the park at Arbury. Would you be able to accommodate them? And I can guess what her answer would have been. But Arbury went out of their way, didn't they? The whole area went out of its way to celebrate this centenary. 2,000 people is a lot of people to organise. My first thought is, what did they do for toilets? But you know, you do have these sorts of thoughts, don't you? And then on the third day, as you can see, literary festival, music festival. This was for the more specialists, for the kids or the schools that wanted to take part. So really, although the whole thing was compressed into about a week, whereas for the bicentenary, we spread it out over the whole year. It was pretty impressive. Now this is only the one slide that I've got, but Coventry also celebrated the centenary, and this book on the left is a beautifully bound. It was done, I think, by the library at the time in Coventry, and what they did was to put evidence of everything that had happened during their week or fortnight of celebrations, bound it up, and it's there for anybody to see. And some of the stuff that was included was a photographic exhibition. You can see the picture on the right of Bird Grove, George Eliot's study window over the entrance. And all these pictures were taken by members of the Coventry Photographic Society in 1919. They went out with they'd have been plate cameras, probably for the most part, taking these pictures, and then they mounted this exhibition. And 100 years later, the Coventry Photographic Society did the same thing, and they went re-photographed what was there 100 years ago. And we were glad to mount an exhibition for them at Chilvers Cone Heritage Centre. Lots more that could be said about that, but just 2 points really to add. It was 1919, was 39 years after George Eliot's death, and I don't think the organisers in Coventry realised that John Walter Cross was still alive, albeit an 80-year-old by then. And they forgot to invite him to any of the events until, I think, quite late in the day, when they realised he was still alive and sent off a hurried invitation, which he declined. But there we are. And then the second point to make is that a key player in setting up this week of events in Coventry and the exhibitions was the Reverend F.R. Evans, Fred Evans, who was George Eliot's nephew, Isaac's oldest son, and he was the rector of nearby Bedworth and had been since 1876. He went to rugby school and Oxford, where he played a lot of cricket. He was born in 1842, and he would have been in his teens, 14, 15, 16, when his aunt eloped to Weimar, and Isaac, his dad, began his 26-year-long sulk. And so I often wonder what was said at the dining table at Griff, you know, when it happened, whether it was talked about at all by Isaac and the family, just ignored and people were almost forbidden to say, or whether Frederick picked up some choice comments from his dad, you know, about this wayward sister. I would love to have been a fly on the wall. But whatever it was, and certainly later on, F.R. Evans made some pretty dreadful statements in reference to this awful, you know, gap of 25, 26 years between Mary Ann and her brother. He referred to it in a lecture in about 1907, I think. He said it was all a business misunderstanding, you know, which is not quite what was happening. Anyway, at some stage, Fred Evans came round to see the importance of a centenary celebration, and he was a key person in putting on the exhibitions and the displays in Coventry. But interestingly enough, even then, 40 years on, he himself received criticism from other churchmen for taking part, you know, for giving recognition to this scarlet woman who happened to be his sister. Right, so that's Coventry. Now, these are two people who played an important part, I think, in helping to establish George Eliot's reputation in Nuneaton. Alfred Scrivener, he died aged 41, so, you know, but he was an important local historian and newspaper editor. And he wrote very well indeed about Old Nuneaton. He was the one who discovered the Nuneaton Diary, which documents several of the events used by George Eliot in Scenes of Clerical Life. And he wrote a moving piece after her death in the local paper in the Nuneaton Observer, 31st of December 1880, so just after the funeral. He says, "There are some of George Eliot's schoolfellows living among us now, but their recollection is somewhat vague. From those whom we have questioned, we gather that their famous schoolfellow was a shy and reserved girl with a profusion of light hair, puffed in front, above strongly lined, almost masculine features. One recalls that the first time she sat down to the piano, Mary Ann Evans astonished her companions by her knowledge of music and her command of the instrument. She mastered her lessons with an ease which excited wonder. She read with avidity. She joined very rarely in the sports of her companions. A reserve which was not the result of pride in her intellectual superiority, but rather of modest diffidence and shrinking sensibility, prevented her from forming any close friendships among her schoolfellows. She was the clever girl of the school, but, says one of her schoolfellows, we never thought," and Scrivener adds, what? That her true rank would be among England's greatest. He was an accomplished writer. You know, there aren't many local newspapers that have writers who can put quality stuff like that now. So if you wanted to follow it up, I'm sure most of you know the collection by Ken, I think it's Ken Collins in the States, called George Eliot Interviews and Recollections. It's a wonderful book, dragging bits in from all over the place about George Eliot. And then the other person we need to be aware of as well in the background is Alfred Francis Cross, 1863 to 1940, very cultured man, poet, playwright, journalist, author. And he lobbied for decades to gain recognition for George Eliot in Nuneaton. He became editor of the Nuneaton Observer and then bought the Nuneaton Chronicle. And he was a colleague of E.A. Shute, who you'll hear more of later, and he was a moving force in local theatre. Again, a academic, interested, intellectual man editing a local paper. He hoped for a significant memorial for George Eliot after the 1919 centenary, but not enough money was raised. In fact, £30 was raised, which wouldn't go far even then. But the same man, of course, founded the George Eliot Fellowship in 1930. And his great-granddaughter joined the fellowship this year. So, right. So we move on then to what else was happening with regard to George Eliot in these 40 years. And again, most of these are in the years from 1900 up until the centenary, making money out of her. So we've got Birch and Harris, later Birch and Company, as you can see from the two advertisements, early years of the century, about 1910, 1911. These are the George Eliot, the famous George Eliot cycle, is also built to order. It contains every refinement known in cycle construction and is one of the smoothest, speediest machines on the road. And then on the road as well, makers of the celebrated George Eliot cycle from £5 to £12. So people weren't nervous about using George Eliot's name and reputation if it was helping them to sell things. Nothing changed much there. There is a really interesting book as well that talks about the way in which George Eliot's name was commercialized, and it's called The Business of the Novel. Came out of a PhD thesis by Simon Frost. It was published in 2012. But I wonder, you know, in an idle minute, you wonder about Mr. Birch's bikes. Was he just using it because this famous woman lived locally and let's use it? Or is there was there a deeper thought? Is a sort of proto-feminist thing going on here, you know, that a woman ahead of her times lends her name to a bicycle ahead of its time that appeals to the adventurous woman? I don't know. That's maybe something we could talk about. But then we move on to, oh no, this is still sales. This is a 1911 advertisements. Support local industry by using the George Eliot specialities, viz. George Eliot sauce, mushroom ketchup, browning for gravies, and all produced at the George Eliot Sauce Works in Chilverscote and Nuneaton. It's marvellous, really, isn't it? But obviously they felt that using that name would help sell their products, otherwise they wouldn't have used it. But I don't know, times have changed. Would you sell a sauce with a famous author's name? I don't know. HP sauce, of course, Harold Wilson. Anyway, let's not go there. But let's there's something I want to read to you, and this is a diary entry. Top left it says sauce dedicated to George Eliot, 6 exclamation marks. And then on the right-hand page, halfway down, in capitals, regard this atrocious label. What next, pray? So the writer is obviously horrified. The writer actually is Alison Evans. We've already met Fred Evans, the rector, who is Isaac's son. So Alison Evans was George Eliot's great niece, and she kept a journal from 1903 to 1918. This is from 1906 when Alison was 15. So she's a rather righteous 15-year-old, strongly Anglican, devout young woman. And she is horrified at the thought of her great aunt being used to sell sauce. And this is the label that she's complaining of. You would say, wouldn't you, that the portrait doesn't flatter George Eliot, but leafy Warwickshire, R.J. Smith and Sons, real mushroom ketchup. And the blurb on the right, you know, is no different from many modern day blurb, really, that the mushrooms were gathered in the meadows surrounding the birthplace of George Eliot, so they must be all right. It's used to sell football boots and snooker, whatever. People are still doing it, so we shouldn't be too snobby about it. What's interesting about this, though, is that Alison was so cross about it that she went to the trouble of removing the sauce bottle label from the bottle, which she probably had to soak it off to do that, dry it, and then put it in her diary. My strong suspicion is that this is the only label in existence from that particular run of mushroom ketchup bottles. There is somebody in Nuneaton who has a glass bottle made for R.J. Smith and Sons. We have the label. It would be nice to match the two together, but whether that will ever happen, I don't know. But there we are. I'm really delighted that Alison got so cross, because otherwise that bottle label would have disappeared. So again, you know, she's used to sell common or garden mushroom ketchup, but she comes into her own. So we come on now to the more serious appeal. And we're going to look, well, mostly really at the book on the left there, George Eliot, Her Early Home. And this book was put together by Emily Swinnerton. Let's have a look. We'll move on. The second one, which we'll mention briefly, is William Mottram, who is an amazing character, really. And then Scenes and People in a Novel by Charles Alcott, which we probably won't have time to deal with. But let's look at George Eliot, Her Early Home. It's a delightful book. It was published by Raphael Tuck. Now, we've already seen Tuck producing postcards, very high quality work, and would have commanded a price too. Now, this is one of the pages. This is one of Patty Townsend's pictures, landscape pictures, as you can see. On the whole, the pictures are reasonably sentimental and rural. You know, the modern movements in art were not having much of an influence on the three artists here. But it was published in 1891. So it's earlier, it's pre-postcard, pre those pamphlets and booklets. And it was reprinted in 1900. It is a lovely book, printed on thick, high quality paper. My copy cost me £70 about 20 years ago, but that was in the days before Abe Books. And you can go to Abe Books now, and of course, if there's a reasonable number of it about, they find their own level, and you can pick one up for 20 or 30 quid now. And it has also been reproduced as a print on demand black and white one. But it's a lovely, lovely book. And again, it's a sign of quality and quality products being produced to honor the name of a quality writer. So it's a collection of texts that link the novel with the locality. So the pictures are always picked up with references in the text. Emily Swinnerton came from a well-to-do family in Nuneaton. Patty Townsend lived in Nuneaton. She wasn't born in Nuneaton, but she lived here. She married, she came from a well-to-do family, married well, the Johnson family, and lived, she married him late in life, and was stepmother really to his children, but he lived in Attleborough Hall, which was a very big building in Attleborough. It's long since gone, but no shortage of money. But she was a professional artist. She was properly trained, and she did a lot of really interesting work, especially the work here. Lillian Russell, I didn't know anything about until the other day researching for this, and discovered that Lillian Russell is actually Patty Townsend's niece. In her early 20s. And George Kilburn, he would have been important to Raphael Tuck. You know, this is a commercial proposition. But Kilburn was a very well-established artist, portraitist. He was well known, and his name on a work would help to sell it. So that was Raphael Tuck's insurance policy, if you like. And then the next picture, where's my arrow gone? Oh, there we are. So the picture on the left is one of Kilburn's. It's Janet, of course, being chucked out of the house, you know, by her violent, drunken husband. And then the picture above is the housekeeper's room at Arby, and that's one of those by Lillian Russell. So it's a fabulous book, and it does speak of quality and respect, and it would have been sold all over the country, though largely, I suspect, in the Nuneaton area. Now, this is something that today is the first time I've ever shown these pictures, and I acquired it only about a couple of months ago from, and again, the wonders of the internet, from a book dealer in America. This is a little calendar, but it was done by, as you can see, arranged and illustrated by Patty Townsend. Raphael Tuck, again, getting in on the act. The George Eliot calendar for 1889. I'd never seen one before. I don't know whether it was a one-off, whether there was another one in 1890. I just don't know. But to me, it was really interesting because it is, again, showing a commercial interest. And what happened, it's only tiny, as you can, as I say, it's 3.5 inches wide by 4 inches deep. And there are several pages and blank pages for notes inside. But again, you get this lovely illustration there of Astley Castle. The month, each month, as you can see top right there, is not a particular place. It's just a sort of stylized rural scene. But the other page is cottages at Griff, bottom right. And again, you'll see that later on. So we're seeing here some serious work, really, of Raphael Tuck being involved, of professional artists being involved, which is very interesting, really, in those early years of the last century. It's interesting also the sort of sense of that previous one, the book itself. Let's just pop back that and that one, this book. In a way, it's doing what a lot of modern scholars are doing, of trying to place George Eliot in her geographical context. Ruth Livesey has spent a year, you know, doing research on the part of place in George Eliot's writing, and it's popular with lots of academics at the moment. But in a way, this was a non-academic's early version of that work, of seeing the importance of locality and the text that follows it. There are problems with that we might come on to later. Anyway, there we are. Now, this is by Patty Townsend, and it's the first time anybody has seen this. So it's a first for you. It's a Patty Townsend original, 1887 it's dated, showing Griff House. She was a lovely artist, very delicate watercolours. And this is one of a set of 6, and I'll show you the others. So the top left is Griff Hollows, very similar to the one that you just saw on the calendar. Again, at the bottom there, this became one of the standard views of Chilverscoaton Church. And Patty Townsend used it, as you saw in the book. This is another version of it. It was used by postcard manufacturers as well. It appears in all sorts of ways. And then there's another one of the canal at Griff Hollows. Whoops, right. And then these are the last 2, and these are in the grounds at Griff. So I don't know who commissioned these in 1887. But what I do know is that they have come down through the Evans line until now, until January of this year when I bought them. I would love to know whether Isaac paid for them or commissioned them. I think it rather doubtful myself. Fred might have done, his son Fred might have done. I don't know. Or there might even have been preliminary works by Patty Townsend for that later George Eliot, Her Early Home. There's a lot of work to be done here. The museum has got some early draft work by Patty Townsend on the production of that book. They may know that I've got these. They've seen the newsletter. Members have already seen these in the newsletter, but it's nice to see them on a bigger screen. But certainly, I do know that they were in the possession of Alison Evans, or, well, I think Fred, it must have been Fred, then to Alison, and then to her older daughter, Susan. And Susan I knew, and when Susan died, they passed to her cousin, Tenniel Evans, who at one time was president of the fellowship, and many of us remember him as an actor. And then from him, they went to his daughter, Selina Evans, who is an actor, and she and her husband sold them. And they've come to me, and ultimately, I hope, to the fellowship, and ultimately, I hope, to the visitor centre, because they really are lovely and they're unique. So now, this is where I have to make a confession to you and say that there should have been 6 slides now, dealing some of the other people who came to Nuneaton and wrote books. And I put all the slides together last night, and about 2 hours ago, I thought I'll just go through them all and rehearse what I'm going to say. And when I got to slide 30, there was nothing. There was a blank. They've just disappeared, which is not a very happy thing. But mostly, the rest of the slides, the rest of the talk really is about comments and what people said. And I'll deal with that, and then we'll come to Edward Shute, if that's all right. I'm sorry that happened. You can imagine what happened to my heart when I realised, and I was able to rescue 2 or 3 and put them in, but not enough to redo it properly. But let's look what I wanted to do after those slides of Patty Townsend's was to look at other outside writers visiting Nuneaton. And one of them was a man called Parkinson, who produced, I'm just going to sort this out, right, who produced a book called Scenes from the George Eliot Country in 1888. So that's pre a lot of the printed stuff we've been looking at, around about the time that Patty Townsend was doing those pictures. And he came along, and this is one of the things he says. Nuneaton is neither ignorant of nor indifferent to the distinction that has come to it by reason of George Eliot's associations with the district. It has not yet, however, been equal to the enterprise of producing a handbook which would guide the stranger to spots of interest identified with her life and work, because 20 years later, those books would have been produced. But while you would search the town in vain for a scrap of printed matter bearing upon those places, the chances are that the first adult person you met in the street would give you much of the information you required, and what he or she failed in would be made up by the next person you came across. Now, it might just be me, but I think those words, if she had failed in, would be made up by the next person. I think what he meant to say would be made up for by the next person. But I think there may actually be more truth in what he actually wrote, because I've got a strong suspicion that, people were telling him what he wanted to hear, which is a natural thing in a way, I mean, Parkinson also says that Marianne attended for a short time the free school in Chilvers Coton, along with Isaac. Now, there is no evidence for that, but the story was repeated in the early life book that we've already seen. And the fellowship, of course, holds most of its meetings in that building, the Chilvers Coton Free School, now the Chilvers Coton Heritage Centre. But there's no evidence whatever that she or Isaac ever attended there. There we are. It goes into print and it gets repeated. We still see it, don't we? You go online to look at something and you see the same phrases repeated in site after site after site, where all they've done is paste and copy. And so it was happening here. But he visits the school, the Elms. Now, bear in mind, this is 55, getting on for 60 years since Marianne was there as a girl. But he says the pleasant and courteous schoolmistress will show you through the place, the Elms where she attended, from 1828 to 1832, and then sit down and chat with you about the wonderful girl who was once a scholar there, respecting whom memories yet linger about the place, and whose name will be associated with the ivy-clad house and the little schoolroom as long as they endure. So there's some interesting material, I think, in the book, but I do also think that local people told him and other inquirers what they wanted to hear. And they all seem to have remarkable memories for what happened 60 years earlier. And he also falls into the trap, as a lot of these early writers do, and some modern ones, of saying which real person becomes which character in a work of fiction. And it's fraught with danger, but all these early guides, will tell you quite blithely that this character in that novel is so-and-so. And they produced leaflets, a guide to all the characters. I think that is demeaning to the author, really, but there we are. I suppose it's a helpful sort of shorthand and a sort of basic knowledge. Anyway, it was perpetuated by numerous subsequent writers. And as I've already said, 60 years on, it's a long time to remember one pupil. But then last May, for the 75th anniversary of the end of the war, I was sitting in the garden reading, because in the village here we had all sorts of events, basically an excuse for a drink and a chat in the street. And somebody came by who said, were you a teacher? And did you teach at a particular school? And she then said her name. And I remembered her vividly, and that's 50 years ago. So maybe these people, with their better memories and less reliance on print, maybe they were remembering. I don't know. Anyway, the second of the books, which should have appeared on a slide, is William Mottram's The True Story of George Eliot. I think you should always be suspicious of a title which claims to tell the true story of anything. But Mottram was nothing if not persistent. And even among the many evangelical preachers of the time, of which he was one, Mottram was a monumentally crashing bore. He really was. He was extraordinarily proud of his shared family history with George Eliot, especially from the Staffordshire branch. And he went on and on about it for decades, literally decades. But in 1890, as part of his research, he tried to visit Isaac at Griff. Now, you know, we know that Isaac had not been well disposed towards his sister for the last 30 years, 40 years really, because she'd been dead 10 years. And his obsequiousness comes across in the letter he wrote to Isaac after Isaac was not at home to this irritating sycophant knocking at his door. And poor old Mottram was absolutely mortified, you know, that he'd made the effort to go to Griff and to see the house where this wonderful relation of his had lived. And so he said, I won't quote it all because it's 4 pages, but you get the idea of what Mottram was like just from this bit. Dear Sir, he wrote, October the 10th, 1890, I desire to apologise to you for any slight annoyance I may have occasioned you by my letter and attempted call of this week, and beg to say that I will refrain from anything of the kind in future. Allow me, however, briefly to explain, I can never forget that my maternal grandmother's maiden name was Anne Evans, and that she was the sister of your father. While I was a boy, I was much in her company, and she inspired me with respect for the name of Evans by her enthusiastic admiration for her brothers, especially Robert Evans. Many an hour have I listened to her stories about them and about the home life of 100 years ago at Ruston Common. I did much desire the honour and pleasure of holding an interview with you. I really sought nothing at your hands but the sight of your face and the grasp of your hand as members of the same family stock. But as it is evident that would be no pleasure to you, I will regretfully forego it. So poor old Mottram, and he goes on this vein for 4 pages. Now, Isaac was being Isaac, wasn't he? It's no more than we would expect, really. And I suspect he was irritated by the succession of admirers who beat a path to his door, wanting to talk about the sister that he ignored for 26 years. There might have been a tinge of guilt at play there, I don't know. Anyway, Mottram offered other ways of meeting and that were all rejected. And in any case, by the end of 1890, Isaac was dead. But Griff did become a place of pilgrimage, and it went out, the building went out of the Evans family during the 1890s as Walter, the other son, moved out. And Warwickshire County Council took it over as a dairy school. But this interesting notice appeared in the Coventry Herald on the 2nd of August, 1907. And this is interesting in view of our desire to build or to create a visitor centre at Griff House. Owing to the continually increasing number of American and English tourists who apply for permission to view Griff House, situated on the main road between Bedworth and Nuneaton, Warwickshire County Council, who use the building as a dairy school, have decided to make a charge of 6pence a head to those viewing the interior. Griff House is a picturesque, evergreen-clad homestead, and here George Eliot resided from the age of 6 months until her early womanhood. Interesting sidelight, isn't it? They're all keen to make money out of her. Now, because of the slides that disappeared, there's a little bit that I've had to miss out, but I'm conscious of the time, so it's probably no bad thing. And so we come now really to Edward Shute. And this was his book. This was his book of memoirs, some recollections, as he says, of the local drama by Edward Arnold Shute. There he is on the left, looking a bit distinguished. And it's a wonderful collection of memories. And Shute always, of course, a leading light and normally the lead player in whatever production there was. But the joy of this book is that it describes scenes and characters who could have stepped out of scenes of clerical life. It's full of small town rivalries, inflated egos, and great detail, but it does also reveal information about how Nuneaton viewed George Eliot that we don't get anywhere else. So some excerpts, just a few, will illustrate what I'm saying. And this is what Shute says. In the autumn of 1890, George Eliot's Adam Bede was produced for the first time in Nuneaton, and this was probably the most successful as well as the most popular of any effort we ever made. A dramatised version of the book by the late Howell Poole was brought to our attention. We felt that enormous local interest must accrue to the presentation on the stage of the well-known novel in the very birthplace of the illustrious authoress herself. They had a tendency to call female writers authoresses in those days. Anyway, so two things to point out here. First, Edward Shute starred as Adam Bede in the 1890 production. Two, this stage version was altered by Howell Poole so that it has a happy ending with Hetty in Adam's arms. It sort of destroys the point of the book a bit, doesn't it? But there we are. It's easy to be critical, but of course it still happens on stage and in films. The old things are altered all the time by quite distinguished companies. Well, then we move forward to 1896, 6 years later. In the summer of 1896, arrangements were made for the production of Adam Bede during the coming winter. Several of the original members, owing to various causes and to my sincere regret, now withdrew from taking any further active part with the company. This rendered a partial reorganization necessary so that when a piece was put into rehearsal, I had quite a lot of material to deal with. There's all sorts hidden amongst those lines. There's all sorts of rivalry and disputes and arguments, you know, a typical drama society in action, really. And he goes on to say, Howell Poole's version of the novel, although taking liberties with the book, notably in the happy ending, altered in deference to public taste, makes a really good play and proved just as popular with Nuneaton audiences as when first presented in 1890. So we've got Adam Bede in 1890 and in 1896. I mean, looking at it from here, I think to myself, well, Adam Bede's not set in this area, really. Why didn't they do an adaptation of Mill on the Floss, perhaps, you know, or Silas Marner even, or even bits of scenes of clerical life? But no, anyway, they're stuck with Adam Bede. But note to make, the part of Adam Bede in 1896 was again played by Edward Shute. So he's now starred twice. Well, we now move on to 1919 and the centenary. Shute writes of the bickering and backstabbing that took place, the setting up of a committee to raise money for a permanent memorial to George Eliot. There was discussion with A.F. Cross, our man, about doing a production of Romola that Cross and Shute had worked on back in 1892. That's quite ambitious, isn't it, really? Dramatic version of Romola for a local, you know, provincial theatre. Anyway, it didn't happen. It fell through. So they went back to Adam Bede. There were problems finding Howell Poole's script 23 years after the last production, but eventually everything was sorted except that Shute made efforts to stick more closely to the Eliot story. He says, in our centenary production, I made an effort to keep as closely to the spirit of the original as possible. And although the ending was terribly sad, yet by showing the death of Hetty, we were but foreshadowing after events. The play was very successful, but there is no doubt the then growing dissatisfaction with the mismanagement of the July celebrations had turned people's minds from the subject and thus affected our financial results. So he can't avoid these, you know, these internecine disputes and arguments. But isn't it pure George Eliot? It could have stepped out of scenes of clerical life. Well, we should just make a note that 29 years after his first triumph as Adam in 1890, the 1919 production also starred Edward Shute in the lead part. He was by now quite decidedly middle-aged man, so how he coped with that, I don't know. I wish there were more time to read Shoot. He harbours many grievances about the way the 1919 celebrations were mismanaged, and is contemptuous that only £30 was raised for the memorial. But it has to be repeated that it's due to the work and enthusiasm of people like Shoot and Cross and their drama groups that George Eliot's name was kept in front of people locally. And there are just another illustration. There he is, look, in 1896, stalwart Adam Bede. And here he is in 1919, along with Parson Irwin, who had a jacket specially made for the part, which then eventually went into the ownership of the local authority, and it was used by the town crier for many, many years, and is now in the museum. And then there's Hetty. So there we are. It's a really useful and invaluable book to show us. And we sort of end really. This is the portrait of it's the statue of George Eliot, but it looks shiny, doesn't it? That's because this is the resin copy at George Eliot Hospital. But had we been dealing with post 1919, there were so many other things that we could say about the way in which George Eliot's name has been kept alive in the area. But there's the statue. So what I'm saying to you really is that Cross's vision, you know, of some sort of memorial, permanent memorial in Nuneaton, although he'd tried for decades, it didn't happen in his lifetime, but he did found the fellowship. And it was the fellowship that was responsible for this statue in 1986. So sometimes good things take longer to reach us, but they are there eventually. And we end also then with another of Mr. Birch's really quite clever advertisements with his George Eliot for taking the first letter of these sets of quotations, each one of them a bit of one of the novels. Go as well as ever, Daniel Deronda, and so it goes through. So I hope you've found that interesting. It's really only scratching the surface. I think there's a lot more work that could be done. And the interesting thing about George Eliot is that there are still things that can be done. You know, we haven't discovered by any means all that there is to be discovered about her. So thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you very much, John. That was really interesting, and also thank you for sharing some of the items in your collection with us. While he was talking about the source, I was personally trying to imagine what a bottle of J.K. Rowling pasta sauce might look like, or how about Charles Dickens digestives? I think the possibilities are endless. So now, if anybody has any questions, I'll unmute you all. Where are we? Oh, well, I can't mute you all. If you just want to unmute yourselves and feel free to ask any questions.
Could I then? I'm just intrigued. Just John Eliot here.
Oh, no, John, yes.
Hello to you all. I'm just interested. The 1919 centenary.
Yes.
I noticed that there were competitions for essay and so on, and I'm just wondering, do any of the winning entries exist? I would be particularly intrigued by the winning poetry.
I agree entirely.
Or any of them, really.
Yeah, any of them. The honest answer is that I don't know. They haven't come my way, but I have a strong suspicion that there is a lot of material in Coventry that hasn't been looked at probably for quite a long time. They may have found their way to Coventry. I don't. I'm not aware of any of them in Nuneaton. I don't think the museum have got any such things. So it would be really interesting to know really what happened to them. They might just have been returned, you know, and lost.
It could simply be that they were returned. Yes.
Yeah. but it would, I agree with you, it'd be really interesting because
It would be fascinating to see the winning entries. Yes.
it really
Thank
would.
you. And thank you for the talk. That was fascinating.
You're welcome.
Back on.
Nobody else has any questions?
Yes, John, I wonder, do you know who Madam Sarah Grand was? Did you find anything out about her?
No, I don't, John. I'd love to know more. The trouble is, every time you start doing something like this, you end up with a whole list of further questions you've got to try and find answers to. I don't know anything about her at all. But I mean, it was a revelation to me that Patty Townsend's niece, you know, became one of the artists, so we're keeping it in the family. So I just don't know. It would be lovely to find out more.
Val knows.
Valerie's got a question.
Yes. Oh no, not a question. I can just answer that question about Sarah Grand.
Oh yes.
She was one of those infamous or famous new women writers, along with, you know, George Eliot and company. And so she would have been an advanced woman, a new woman, whatever you wanted to call them. But it would have been quite a coup to get her, you know, yes. If you hang on a minute, I'll go and find some of her tomes. She wrote these really huge, long novels that are a bit tedious to read today, but she was, in her day, she was, you know, well known.
Well, thanks, Valerie. That's very good.
Yep. There we go.
It's really interesting because what sort of tied in with that was that when Cross founded the fellowship in 1930, I think the first president and the first guest speaker was Elizabeth Haldane, who at the time was one of the leading lights, you know, in George Eliot studies. So they seem to have managed to get the right people involved, really, from the early days.
Shoshana has a question, John.
Sure. No, I just wanted to say something in defense of Sarah Grand. I like her books.
Oh, well,
and
here
Mark
they are.
Twain, right. Mark Twain liked the Heavenly Twins. And I mean, I've even taught her to contemporary students. Well, Grand was the name that she chose for herself as a pseudonym, you know, that women can be grand, and that she saw, you know, women as powerful, that she was powerful. The Heavenly Twins is, well, I mean, it has some material that would have been very shocking to audiences of the time, that sexually transmitted diseases on the part of a man who was unfaithful in his marriage could have consequences. And, you know, pictures of, you know, that women could achieve. So I like her writing. And as I said, I managed to sell it to some American contemporary students, even though you're right. She does, she never thinks that less is more. She writes a lot. Yes.
Yes. 3 decades.
Yes. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
But many of her, you can find her on Gutenberg.org for free. You know, you can get some of the books and just try it out for yourself. But yeah, no, she's, in her time, she was well known and respected by people on both sides of the pond.
Excellent. Thank you.
That is good. Again, it does show that they were able to attract good people in the field. Yeah.
Go on.
Could I just make a comment, Elaine?
It's all right, Bob, you go first.
Well, no, it's just a comment about this traumatization of Adam Bede.
Yes.
When I was in Wirksworth area a couple of years ago, researching for Adam Bede, I was in the Matlock Public Records Office.
Yeah.
And they've got a silent film of Adam Bede made in 1918. And it's probably, by the way you described that play, it seems to be based on that because it ends with Hetty in Arthur's arms. It's quite nice, actually. It was quite, I didn't have time to watch it all in great detail, but I watched it and yeah, it was interesting. And yeah.
No, that's interesting.
1918, one of the earliest.
Yeah, very early. Because there was a version of Romola, I think, wasn't there? A silent version made in the 20s or 30s.
Ah,
Yeah, this guy Elvey, I think his name was. He made quite a few literary films, including several by George Eliot's novels.
Novels. That's really interesting. Yeah.
They've got a copy in the Matlock Public Records Office, and yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bob. That's interesting.
I just wanted to ask John, when are you going to do another Alison Evans slideshow?
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I've never done it for the fellowship. I did excerpts from it at a lunch, one of the birthday luncheons in about 1990. The reason I've hesitated is that she's a bit removed from George Eliot herself. Great niece. She does talk about George Eliot, and I love it as a slideshow. But I felt I might be indulging a bit,
No, indulge away.
It's still my ambition to get the journals published, because they are lovely. She has a great sense of humour. She can be very bossy, and she can't spell save her life, which is a delight, really. But I do love them, and for all the slideshows and talks I give, it's still my favourite, really, and people do respond.
There's a silent film of Adam Bede. Oh, you've got it up.
Yeah. Ah.
And then Dame Sarah Grand, who was one of thought to be a new woman, who wrote large stories.
I asked the question, she answered two of them.
Oh, you answered it, Dame Sarah Grand. Oh, you were there, no?
Hello.
Anybody else got anything to comment or question?
Interesting that so very many people were involved in that production with the sort of the 2000, as it were, but there isn't that much interest now.
No, I mean, one of the things I didn't mention, that there were a couple of slides which because of this disaster, I had to abandon. But one of the aspects that I would like to follow up more, and I would only have been able to scratch the surface of, but it is really important, and that is, what part were schools playing talking about George Eliot? Not only nationally, but certainly from our point of view, from my point of view with this talk, locally. And the impression I get from conversations I've had with a lot of people who probably are now dead was that many of the schools in Nuneaton and Bedworth did teach George Eliot, and they expected the children, these would be brighter children, I think, to cope with the language of the Mill on the Floss, and certainly elderly people who I spoke to had got very fond memories of reading George Eliot. These might have been, I'm thinking of one woman in particular who went to the Nuneaton Girls' High School, so would be surrounded by other intelligent girls. But there are, and she had still got the copies of the Mill on the Floss and Adam Bede and Silas Marner that she was given by her grandma as a little girl. She was born in 1908, so this is round about just after the First World War, really, was doing this reading. And it stayed with her all her life. But the pictures I was going to show you, there were two in particular, and this is from an ordinary in inverted commas, from Leicester Road Council School in Bedworth, which at that time would have been an all-through school till the school leaving age in 1925, when these pictures came from, was 14. But the teacher, and I suspect it's the teacher that does this rather than the school having a policy, but the teacher must have been enthusiastic about George Eliot, and she set these girls, it's a lovely picture of them standing as a group of girls on the step, the then outside steps at Chilverscoaton Church. But their task was to do really what the My Early Life book did, to match text with some sort of illustration. But there were some photographs that they took, but the main part of it was they had to find the flowers that were mentioned in a piece of George Eliot text. They then had to press them, then stick them into an album with the pressed flower and, in their best handwriting, the passage from George Eliot that links with them. That's quite an interesting exercise to do. And that has survived. John was asking about these essays and poems and things. Wouldn't it be wonderful to read those? We can read this one particular thing that has been saved. It's actually, I think it's in the museum collection at Nuneaton, but I photographed various pages of it. And I think that's an experience. It was a girl who grew up in Collycroft, which is a poor part of Bedworth. But obviously they were challenged and they enjoyed finding the flowers, learning about the flowers and putting them in the album and then best writing for the script. But I haven't come across many other examples than that, except to say, at least before the war, pupils were reading some George Eliot, whereas on the whole, in the last 20 years, very few students or pupils have read George Eliot at all. It was one reason why we gave away, 4,000 copies of Viv's abridged version of Silas Marner to local primary school children, because we wanted to try and re-establish that connection of schools with this local author who is internationally famous.
Could I just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Personal comment. As you know, I went to Nicholas Chamberlain Comprehensive School in Bedworth, which is, for those who don't know, just down the road from Griff. And I did A-level literature, English literature, and we didn't. I knew George Eliot from the hospital where I was born, but I didn't really know anything about her. And we had the Moonstone for O-level, and I think Wuthering Heights or something for A-level. Never occurred to us to read a George Eliot novel. And the only thing, when I got a place at university, my grandfather told me his father was a watchmaker in Fosel in Coventry, and my grandfather told me that his aunt used to clean for George Eliot. I don't know if there was some connection, vague connection, because we saw the article, a couple of years ago. But I'm just trying to substantiate what you actually said, that it was a very tenuous connection. I only read Middlemarch when I think I was in my second or third year at university.
Yeah.
And I was born in the George Eliot Hospital.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
There you go.
Middlemarch was on the syllabus in the early 1970s because we did it. So.
Yes,
yeah.
and Middlemarch has been on A-level syllabuses during the in the early years of this century, I think, because Viv taught it at Keggs. I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult to say. I don't know what the best way forward is really, but it would be, I am working with a primary school in Bedworth that wants to redevelop its entire history syllabus to take more note of local history, and they're building into that recognition of George Eliot and making that, there's a sector somewhere in the national curriculum, which talks about studying local people. And so they're linking George Eliot as the writer with other local history. But that requires a lot of effort by the teachers, and very often I find that if I go into school to talk not so much about George Eliot but local history, and I then try and build George Eliot into it without them realizing, it requires a lot of work and a lot of research, and the books aren't necessarily to hand, for a busy teacher to prepare local history work. I'm not making an excuse for them. That is just the reality. So that if somebody like me offers to go in and show them some slides on old history, they're usually very grateful. But But local history is difficult, really, I think, for all schools, and yet the national curriculum is trying to encourage them to study it.
Pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know about your own locality.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah.
Val has a question or a observation?
Well, I've got my hand up.
Oh,
right.
Val.
I've got my hand up again. Sorry. I'm just, it's not for nothing. I became a teacher because I was always the one ready to talk. But I just wanted to say, I think it's this great, I mean, apart from today's talk, but I thought it was a great idea that they've made those simplified versions of Silas Marner, because as, in my first years at the grammar school, that shows how old I am, we actually read Silas Marner. And as a young girl, I was absolutely, astounded by it, thrilled by it. And, a lot does depend on the teacher, but I think for us, it was really, and there you've got the local history as well, haven't you? I mean, it was really, I could just imagine those sort of pits and all the rest of it. Just seemed to me so exciting, such a good story for for younger children anyway, and not that long. I mean, I just loved it, But it's, you have to make it available, don't you? So I think Viv's version is just brilliant. That's it, hand down.
Thanks, Val. I mean, we were so lucky that in a way the Nicholas Chamberlain Trust in Bedworth were persuaded of its importance.
Yeah. It's such a great story, and it is something for children to get hold of. I think some of them, much as I love Middlemarch, I just think that might be a bit difficult, but I think Silas Marner can touch children's imagination in all sorts of ways. And grown-ups, of course, but...
Yes, they can, Val. I remember, well, Mary will remember, because she and I both went to Wembrook School, and I mean, I was a secondary school teacher, but I had a fabulous afternoon talking about Silas Marner to a class of 6-year-olds.
Oh,
yes. And they understand what Silas Marner, but also a bit about the Mill on the Floss.
Mm-hmm.
They understand sibling rivalry.
Yes.
They will punch their brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And
And
they're probably still doing it. But it was a fascinating experience, and it does show that you can convey bits of George Eliot to any audience. Really, it's just the skill of the teacher rather than the difficulty of the material, because you can. And there are a lot of very, very talented teachers around. I'm constantly amazed now when I go into junior schools and see what they do. It's quite extraordinary.
I think Marie Patterson's got a question.
Yeah, well, I haven't really, but I did make a comment a few moments ago. I mean, I went to a secondary modern school. I'm afraid I didn't pass my 11 plus, but I do have an English degree now. So, but we did actually, in the 50s, we did actually have to, I think it was Silas Marner. I mean, I was a great reader, but I have to say that I did find Silas Marner quite a difficult one to read. I mean, I still find her sentences very long sometimes, and difficult to sort out. Although I'm enjoying George Eliot now, so we were being challenged to read books like that. I mean, I did read Jane Eyre when I was about 9, but I think it's possibly easier to read.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. I mean, I was very interested in the talk, and because I had a lot of the newspaper articles when we had the first lockdown. So I recognised some of those things that you were saying about the dairy school, and
yes,
yeah.
John.
Yes.
Going back to Viv's abridged version, and also what Val said, Silas Marner is such a wonderful story, and I think when we went at the primary school, the children really, engaged with it, didn't they?
They loved it.
They love, yes, they love the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was saying something more then.
No, it's fine. There's a new. I was going to say, Mary, there's a new building estate going up in Bulkington, and Bulkington is one of the places that people argue might have been Raveloe. And Taylor Wimpey are calling this the Raveloe Gardens. And I'm in the process of inquiring of Taylor Wimpey whether they might like to buy copies of our Alice Marner as a freebie for everybody buying a house on the estate. and by the way, we need might a spare 5,000 or 10,000 to put towards equipping the new visitor centre at Griffith. It's worth a try, isn't it? But I don't know. But those are ways in which you can help to embed George Eliot, isn't it? That if people move on to an estate called the Raveloe Estate, unless they're reasonably knowledgeable locally, they wouldn't have a clue what that was.
No.
So if we can help give them leaflets or, tell them about the fellowship, invite them to come to an event, perhaps when the visitor centre's open, come and have a look round, have a drink at Griffith. And it's at that level that lots of people are quite happy to work. And one of the challenges for the fellowship, I suppose, is that we need to be able to interest our academic members as well as the general public who might just want to know a bit more about this amazing woman who lived locally and work on all sorts of levels. And in many ways, those early things that I was showing you, the guidebooks and the postcards, were doing that. They were working at a fairly basic level. But it did mean that there was, I think, probably more general knowledge about Eliot then than there is now.
Yeah.
But thank you for all your attention. I hope you did find it interesting.
Oh, marvellous.
And the fellowship committee council is meeting next week, and we will be venturing towards working on a program of events for the autumn, the Indian variant.
Oh, God.
But it would be nice if we can have even the second part of the year with more or less a program back to normal, But who knows? It's all in the lap of the gods, isn't it? But thank you very much. Do you want to wind up in any way, Juliet?
No, I think if everybody's finished, I say a few people have left. Anna would like us to see if we could do something with what Bob mentioned about the silent movie. So I think
that would be
investigate that further.
Yeah.
Thank you for today's talk, John.
Right.
Really appreciated it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you for getting up early.
Yeah.
It will appear on the website in some form or other at some stage. So thank you all very much indeed. Enjoy
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, let's do the clapping. Oh, I think we can clap. We do the clapping. Is that the clapping? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh.
What are the numbers like for Monday evening, John?
Monday evening.
I know that Mary's given her apologies.
She has, and so has Elaine.
How shall we do that?
But I haven't heard from Rob or Alicia.
No.
But everybody else is okay. Oh,
yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, hello. I can't get the visual, but it's been interesting to listen to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda.
Pleasure. Thank you. It's been great. Very interesting.
Good. And also, Joy, Sue Cutts and John Cutts have a prior Zoom meeting.
Yes.
We've all got priors.
That one, yeah.
But they'll join us after 8:10. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
Thanks, Juliet.
No problem.
I'm gonna go. Bye.
Carl, lovely to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Okay.
Oh. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Stop.
I'm sorry I can't make it, John.
No, that's right, Mary. These things. No,
It's the one night, you know, where the only night I will have with my daughter. So.
Oh, you've got to do that. It would be silly not to.
Yeah. Well, that went very well. I don't know anybody else picked up though. There were two phone numbers that kept coming.
Brenda's, wasn't it?
Sorry?
Yeah.
One of them, Brenda.
One of them was Brenda. And it continuously came up instead of your face, John. So as you were on the right and then the screen, this telephone kept coming. It was very distracting.
I'm sorry.
To be honest, Mary, there was a couple of people that hadn't muted, and I was able to mute them, but I was a bit wary as if I muted the two telephone numbers, whether that would cut them off. So that's why I didn't mute them.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it was. I was ending in 8760, and then I think Brenda.
Yeah, I think one left, and then another number came back, and I think the number that came back actually was Jill, ending in 119. I think that's Jill's number.
Jill's number.
Why did that keep coming up though all the time?
Because when they make a sound, because it's that's the sound. It's a speaker. You know, they interpret. It thinks that's a speaker, so that's why.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But you see, I was actually checking on Google to see if I muted them, whether that would disconnect them, and I was a bit worried about doing that, so that's why I left it. But we might have to perhaps try and do that as an experiment.
Yeah, we could do that, couldn't we? Yeah. But really, I mean, whatever arrangement you make for Brenda, it won't work.
Now, don't be skeptical or cynical or something.
Oh yeah, I've had so many emails over the years from Brenda. You know, she loses everything you give her. So however many times you send the code, she won't have it when she needs it. You know, including today, I had to send it again to her.
Well, I didn't realise I got it. I had to ring Juliet. I'd been out all morning, totally forgot, till 2:25 past.
Well, I'm sorry about those last few slides. Did it seem all right, Juliet? I mean, you knew about it in advance, but couldn't believe it when these slides had disappeared. But it might have added to the length a bit, so it may have been good that we couldn't have those.
Yeah.
And we picked up on some of the points in the conversation afterwards, actually, the schools.
Yeah, I think it went well. Bye, Mary. Can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
What's happened? Is she must have muted.
No, she hasn't. I don't know what's happened. She hasn't muted herself.
No, she's.
Oh, she's had problems before.
Well, bye.
Oh dear. Oh well, I now know how to do a PowerPoint presentation on Zoom. So
well done.
Thank you, Juliet, for your encouragement.
No problem.
I'm doing the same talk again to Bulkington WI in a fortnight's time, so I've got time to reinstate the ones that I lost and tidy it up a bit. But at least I'll feel more confident now to do it.
I think that's the thing. If you don't do it on a regular basis,
you forget.
So, but at least we know about the co-hosting. I think it's
really
the co-hosting and also letting everybody in at the same time.
Yes.
Just hold them in the waiting room, put a little message that they can all read.
Yeah.
And then you can admit them all at one time then.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Very, very good. It's more professional all around, isn't it? Just
yes.
Yeah.
As I say, because I think I sent you, I emailed you that the PDF document that I got sent with that course, and it's all about Zoom etiquette.
Yes, you did. Yes.
I mean, that's something that perhaps if we could pick the things out when the next invite goes out for a Zoom, you could attach
yes.
that to the invite
That's
so
what I
people
did.
know.
Yeah, yeah. I think our American members anyway welcome the
They're
chance.
clued up.
They're okay, aren't they? And it's lovely that they can take part and feel that their subscription is giving them something.
Yeah. No, it's good.
We perhaps ought to look into live streaming.
Timing.
Well, Linda's talk. Their church people are thinking of buying a camera that is designed really for streaming. So that if we have a meeting at Coton, we could live stream it, as long as the speaker agrees and the audience agree. And that builds up the collection of material that we've got that we can allow people access to via the website. About 350 quid, I think. But I'm a bit dubious about mentioning money in the present present situation. So I seem to be standing gingerly on a lot of eggshells. Oh dear. Was Linda here this afternoon?
I didn't see her.
I didn't see her, no.
I think we would have heard her. If she was there, we would have heard
She'd
her.
have had something to say, wouldn't she? Yeah.
I think she probably would. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, thanks for your support. Anyway, I was quite pleased with it. It went reasonably well. And
I thought you both did brilliantly, and you just seem much more relaxed, John, not doing everything.
Oh, it's much better. It was really helpful having Juliet doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Came over very well, both of you.
Good.
Thank you.
And I think it's as well, just keep it, you need a separate set of eyes for sort of like looking who's got the hands up.
Yes.
You do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, people, yeah.
Really good.
Good. Excellent. I've got to go to a wedding reception now.
Oh,
I thought the shirt and tie was for us.
No. Well, it is, of course. but I've got to put a suit on as well. No, it's some of you might know Steve. You might know Steve Flanagan from Designer Frames, picture framer. No.
Oh, the one that had all the copy of Felix Holt.
Yes, that's right. They were in his store. Yes, that's right.
I remember that time, moving them from there to Bedwick.
Well, his first wife died about 3 years ago, and he's remarrying today. So Linda's had to. This is for guests who are allowed to sit outside under a whatever, tent or something. And that started, I think, at 3:30. So I was in bad books really for organising this at the same time as the wedding, which I'd forgotten about. Anyway, it's only in Weston Hall, so I did wonder about popping in and making a provisional booking for the annual lunch, but perhaps we ought to leave that until Monday.
Yeah.
Joy, do you think?
I think, just to give people the opportunity to express their views.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And on that, John, I'm so sorry Elaine isn't coming.
Yes, I am, because she was going to
take the minutes.
Take the minutes.
I think I'd better volunteer in advance, just in case. We do not want minutes like the last ones again.
No, we don't. We don't.
Well,
not.
If the setting's already automatically recording, it's going to record the meeting anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're doing a Zoom meeting,
it is.
Isn't it going to record it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's the point, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, try and get around that, Linda.
Yeah. Somebody still needs to write it up, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, but at least...
Would you be able to send me the recording afterwards, John?
I hope so. Yes, it normally comes down within about an hour from,
Yeah, I mean, no rush, but I mean, I would try and take notes, but that might be helpful.
If you were able to take some basic notes, just in case it all fails, and at least we've got a framework that we can build on.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be lovely, Joy. Thank you so much.
I was looking forward to Elaine's minutes.
Yeah, they're accurate, aren't they?
Yeah. They're not personalised and one-sided.
And I don't think Andrew Copson was here this afternoon.
No, he wasn't.
No.
But you think he's coming? He can come Monday.
Yeah, I think so. He said he can. Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
Is it a
Anyway.
Zoom? Is it a Zoom one, or you're actually going to
No,
Heritage
it's a
Centre?
It's a Zoom.
Yeah. Oh.
Hopefully, the one after that, you know, we'll be able to meet at Coton. But who knows? Who knows?
Thank you very much. Mustn't keep you from your reception, John.
No.
Yes. I think he's quite pleased to be distracted from it, really, if I'm honest.
You can say that, Julia. I couldn't possibly.
But I cannot possibly comment. Yeah, I like that series as well.
Well done, both of you. That was brilliant.
No, thanks, Joy. And thanks,
See you.
Julia.
See you Monday then.
Okay.
Bye.
All right then.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.